Shalom, gamers. Welcome back to the series. This is the second part of the four-part fundamentals series. We will be going over. I was going to go over whatever I said the last part, the last video, but we're going to actually go more in depth on the two corners concept that I talked about last time. The reason we are going to be going more in depth about this is because I didn't feel like I gave enough info. Quick recap of the last episode. If you didn't see it, check it out on my YouTube, twitch or youtube.com/nosocks. Link will be, well, you'll be seeing this on YouTube more likely than watching this on the live stream, which if you are watching from YouTube, please come over, say hello at Twitch, twitch.tv/nosocks, same as the YouTube. We will be going more in detail in part 3 and part 4, and we will see more of the uh, full image breakout as we go along this journey. Forgot what I was going to write exactly, but to recap, the 149 rule. 1 in summary is it's just you. You can only measure and only control your part. This is all in conjunction with the objective. I hope that it's not okay. There's a loud person outside. I'm gonna go close my window real quick. My apologies. That should be a lot better now. The 149 rule, always remembering that this is in pairing with the objective, and the objective always comes first. But the 149 rule, you are the only thing that you can measure. You can break down all of these measurements into 4 concepts, all regarding the knowns and the unknowns. We try to exist in 3 of them, being that anything that has a known is a positive we try to create, and that we are always trying to make us live in the known so that we always have something to rely on. And 1 focuses on keeping ourselves disciplined enough to be in the know 24/7, and then give us the ability to measure all 4 potential outcomes based off of what we do know, what we don't know. The 9 being the 9 potential outcomes of those 4, the knowns and unknowns, talking about advantage, disadvantage, and neutral positions, how to shuffle one thing at a time over and create a whole beautiful system that allows us to go back to the 1 and support the objective from the most basic detail of the game. Hello, Messiah. Messiah is first here today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Move this over here. There we go. Good to see you. We're going to break down what we recapped with at the very end, which is the 2 corners rule. You can measure every gunfight down to the 2 corners rule. Another thing about the 1, remember we're the only variable we can control. We can only compete against someone else of a power of 1. So we isolate down to the 1v1 as often as possible in every game and every format. The 2 corners rule measures distance of an area by lines of sight from one corner to another corner. You put yourself at one position, your opponent sits at the other position. We now have the basics of a 2-corner system. You control one corner because you are always trying to stay in good fundamentals, which keeps you up against one corner at all times, giving you the most defensive viability that you can, while being the most aggressive individual that you can, and get as much value from both your offense and your defense at every possible second, and maximizing any downtimes of those resources from slipping away so that we can be in better position to defeat our opponent using corners. How do we break down the two corners game? How does this simplify? How do we make this go from something we don't understand to something that we fully understand? Is going to be discussed right here, right now. Remember, first things first, if you're on YouTube, come over to the Twitch. You can catch these live, ask questions while I'm actually here. Fantastic, Iggy. Well, does have mod view now. That's great. Awesome. Hope work's going well for you. You can come down, say hello onto the Twitch. And if you are on Twitch, please remember, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe so that you can watch these VODs in more quality. I don't trust Twitch to keep the VODs up all the time and want to be able to circulate these going forward. In the simplification mode of all 1v1s, we are not counting abilities. We are not counting ultimates. We are not counting any other external resources that do not directly impact the 1v1 100% of the time. Meaning that at bare minimum, these things have to be done. That is the goal of it. These three things are not going to be considered in the basic realm of the 1v1. These things are additives, externals, measurable in the regards of understanding the mechanics of each individual game, but can blur the lines of the fundamentals and making them their own variant of the core concept that we are trying to discuss. What is the core concept? It's a lot simpler than you would imagine. We are trying to break down space. By breaking down space, we can create constants. We can create constants. And then from these constants, we can measure. This measurement is what we're looking for. This is what the two corner rule is supposed to develop further for your individual growth. This is supposed to be the yes and no, the red light, the green light, the yellow light of your driving, the stop signs. These are the signs on the road that you would follow when you go on the driving journey of the 1v1. How do we break down space? Space needs to be broken down into two categories. We break this down into two categories. Take one concept, same with the 149 rule, and break it down into two different categories. They both start with R. Actually, let me get rid of. You have risk and you have reward. In essence, stakes and outcomes. You can also call this input and output. There are many different ways to break this down, but we break it down by how much we ourselves, as the one, the individual, can put in. This is us. This line here represents the changeover, and this is the versus them. That's kind of bad. I can just do it this way. Versus them. And when we get results. That's the one for it. Results. Inputs versus them, outputs. Risk, reward. Stakes, outcomes. So, we now know that it is risk and reward. What does this mean? What is this broken down to the simplest concept? When we talk about value, the thing that we will measure whether this risk, doing A, B, or C, is positive or an advantage, neutral, or disadvantage. They go 1 to 1. Now, this is like in a chamber. This is a perfect scenario. This is where no other variables are put in. Doing this every time always gets you this result. We are not accounting for human error. Why do we not account for human error? As human beings, shouldn't we account for human error to become more realistically better? No, because this is a secondary measurement. This is still, remember, we are not talking about the objective. Not yet, at least. This all here is the supporting factor towards the objective. So we treat it as a mathematically measurable variable that will give us as little resistance to input it into the objective, because the result, this reward section, is what is going to change the objective. Our goal is to be in line with what we need to do to win the game as often as possible. Being able to see what we get by our inputs, giving our outputs from uh, making our reward. This is how we know we are succeeding. We are using this as a template, as a measurement. So, what is a risky play? Risk itself. Let's look at what we can do. Because remember, risk is us. This is what we put out onto the table. What are we risking? Every single time, no matter what, you will always be risking loss, because what you put in is directly tied to what you get out. We are putting resources on the line. What is the loss that we have? It's the loss of resource. What resources are we giving up? Space. What does this mean? Well, if good space, if being in a good spot, and we need to make it significantly less, if we stay in a good spot 24/7 with fundamentals, we want to make it less, we want to have some loss, something to have stakes with, we need to make the spot worse. How do we make it worse? We take our corner and we separate from it. Movement. Loss and movement go hand in hand. Why? In 90% of games, not every game, and this is where genres will be different. So this is not 100% of the time. Take this part with a grain of salt. But for the majority of competitive esports I have seen, 90% of the time, when you move plus shoot, you are at a disadvantageous position. That is why moving is considered a loss. This is where the logic of camping a corner actually comes from, is the fear of losing value on their position. So you stay there, and you stay, 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 and you're hoping that it spikes up, and then you stay, and then you stay, and then you stay. This strategy is ineffective. This doesn't work because it is fearful. And if it is fearful, it is predictable. This is another risk. Every move is predictable, even unpredictable moves. Moving is at a disadvantage. So if we move, we're losing. But the paradox is if we sit still, we're also losing. So if we break down a single point from the broken down point of the two corners, right? Remember, we're looking very deep down the line here. And we have a double losing position. What does this mean? This means anything we do is a risk. What is our goal with maximizing the two corners understanding and the 149 rule? Isolating 1v1s, breaking down to the simplest form, and being what? 100% effective. 100% uptime. So, this is actually helping us because we need to make risks or take risks to make rewards. So, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be taking a risk. But now we're going to diversify this concept. We're going to measure losing. Losing will be in two positions, minus and minus minus. Double minus is not multiplicative to positive in this moment because we are not multiplying. We are only adding on every individual part. Multiplying comes with teamwork, which is why you'll see people who do poorly but still gain. This is also why ranked systems are difficult to measure because queuing the game equals profit. You will see people who are bad at games queue 1,000 of them and hit high rank because they gained 1.01 every time simply because they put up the risk, the bare minimum risk, which is the equivalent of like 0.01. This is what 0.01 is. If you don't have any furthering off of this concept, you won't grow in this concept. This is the primary way to gain reward. They take this, do this, and do it 1,000 times. And then high rank. Boom. That's because of the design of the competition. That's why I don't blame developers for having weird rank systems. If it's poorly managed, though, you'll see where the measurements don't add up. So we break down positions as a single dash or double dash, minus or double minus. Why? Why break it down? Remember simplification. If you can't do it in one, do it in two. Divide it in half. What is the difference between these two? Single negative is possibly neutral. You can get to a neutral position within one action. Remember when we talked about actions being small groupings of timings that pushed and develop each other throughout the course of the game. Time will continue to move forward no matter what. You will do actions, even if the action is sitting still, it's still a losing position, but losing positions are always at risk and are always what you put up for risk. Risk is what you turn into reward. Losing at a single stage means you can go neutral in a single action. You're one step away from the more even side of things. A double negative means it's going to take two or more. Winning from this position is not always luck, but luck, this is where luck really skyrockets. Being lucky, having your opponents make mistakes, this is where luck is going to be on your side. This is why you don't give up. This is where your hope comes in. Luck equals hope. How hopeful are you? It's how lucky you will be. If you have hope for the future, you'll be luckier. All while putting in 100% effort as often as you can. So if it takes two or more actions, it's a double negative move. One action, single negative. Great. We've put up our risk. Now, what is our reward? Something I never seem to get at my job. A promotion. Yay. You've promoted. What is promoting a position? Well, what is promoting in a game like chess? You take a pawn, the most basic single level, single dimensional piece, and you can turn it into any piece that isn't a pawn. Almost always, but in very, very rare circumstances, not the best move, but almost always the best move. 99.99% of the time, it's going to be a queen, the most valuable piece. Why? Because when you get one promotion, you want it to be the most effective. What's going to be the most effective? We're trying to get that 100% effectiveness. What's going to be the most effective? The thing that reaches the most spaces in a game like chess. Most spaces, queen covers the most. Because the queen does what the rook does, what the bishop does at the same time. The only time it's not the most effective piece is when you are one move from winning, and that move, not always one move, but most of the time one move. It's only when the knight and its unique circumstance built around it is most valuable. That's the only other time that it's not effective. Even then, most of those positions are still highly winnable with the queen involved, which goes to show how good the queen is. Even then, queen is still a very good second. So, promotion. What is promoting in a game of corners? It means what our number one goal is. Once again, what does that one stand for? What's another part of that one? Simplification. Simplify. Now, I say simplification because we are always aiming to secure. We want to be 100% secure. This security is only measured by the objective. So this will not be a section that is for every game and every moment. This is the first separation of many in the game and cornerings. Why is simplification? It's actually, no, it's not simplification. I apologize. It's control. Simplification is one of the things, it's the thing we will do with control. It's control. Your reward is control. Right there. Your reward for putting up risk is more control. Two corners as a rule says that you can measure any game by two corners. I can sit here, say you're here, and we can take, if I go here and you go here, there will be a sight line between this corner and that corner. Two corners. We have created the game. Who has the advantage? Whoever reaches this. In this scenario where both people are going to meet each other, we're both taking positive advances. Whoever gets to it first wins, because you will have more time to react than they will. And if you have more time to react, you have more frames, literal FPS frames, to win the fight. That's how you try to win. In a scenario where both people are going into an open sight line, this is the most basic as it gets. Run into each other, two corners. Now, what you'll notice is I talked about two corners, and I didn't talk about two structures. Here and here, I talked about the corners. The simplest form of a two-corner game has one spot. And you might think a box, something with multiple distinct corners that you can play around, where you play X and O around two corners of difference at any given point or at starting points. You must each pass a corner to run into each other, or pass or simplify from the two corner gap that exists. Because there's one corner here, another corner to get to you here, one corner here, another corner to get to you there. Two corners. The real two corner game exists like this. It's kind of bad. I'll just do single line. This is a wall. There is no coverage between you and them, except for a tiny little divot. Why do we talk about pixels here? I mean, it's not even full coverage. It's at best 1/4 coverage, and that's generous. Meaning that only 25% of you is covered on this wall. 25% coverage at best. Why do we talk about this? Because this sets up the truly simplest game. The simplest by all definition has no corners, but that is because it then becomes a reaction game. Who hits who in critical or vital spots first? Game of first. If there's 25% coverage, but I can go out this way or this way and reduce this number to 0, I can take a loss, which means I can take a risk and potentially turn it into a reward. If there's 25% coverage, there is still an optimal place to be. There is still a technically right answer. Technically. But it doesn't actually reduce, if we got rid of the wall, the same type of gunfight that happens with 0 corners. In essence, this is a 0 corner game. It really has 2 corners, but it adds up to make 1/2 of a corner at best. How do we take a 0 corner game with a technically optimal position? This is the challenge. You take something that we know how to win without any other variables, add the bare minimum variable, and see if it changes it. It's optimal to stay against the wall, but optimal only lasts for how long? It lasts for the duration of the time to kill. Time to kill, by the way, if you don't know, which at this point I would be surprised, but I'm sure if you are watching a video like this, remember to like and subscribe, by the way, that you would understand the basic concept of time to kill. Does what it says on the tin. How fast can this interaction end? Every game has a standard unit, the most optimal thing that can kill. Then it has an average, and then it has a slowest. We will take the average, because if we can't assume any of this, we will aim for having the average, and good fundamentals will usually lead you to having the average. But what are we up against? If we have average, that's us. What do they have? For the assumption of this, do we say optimal, slowest, or average? What's best for us? Well, slowest is really what's best for us. We want them to have the worst chance of killing us. But we can't hope for that or guarantee it, so we take that out of the image. We also don't want to just take optimal, because at that point we can assume that every position that has any value is then halved in value again. And that doesn't help us, because if we've played fundamentally well and we can only acquire average, then our opponent at the same time would only be able to acquire average in an optimal scenario, or not an optimal scenario, in the most common case. So we consider that we have equal gear. It's 1-to-1. Once again, part of that 149, simplifying, but also keeping things as complicated as possible by using the most simple and then multiplying off of it, developing off of it, taking the knowns and the unknowns. This, by the way, all of this info is the same measurements of those known and unknowns. What do we know? This position and us. What do we not know? Their position and them. So, TTK, we've talked about it. We assume equal TTK. We are as big of a threat as to them as they are to us. We always assume this as a step one. As you get more better at the specifics and the feel of the game, you'll be able to identify this much faster than anyone else. This is where people gain more insight in the game by looking at the stats, by looking at replays, by VOD reviewing. This is what VOD reviewing is all about, is improving how can I identify where my win conditions are and my lose conditions. Remember, all of this, once again, objective is to support and maintain the objective and improve upon its position. So we assume equal time to kill. We assume equal space, equal positioning. What's the last thing that we have to assume? Space, TTK, positioning space, same thing. Speed. The ability to close the gap or swing away from it. In essence, if I run at you and you run away, the distance when running will be the same. The distance here will be the same as the distance here. These are equal. We assume that they have the same speed as us, unless we see otherwise. Identifying these here individually are win cons. If you can find a way to increase their TTK and decrease your TTK, you now have gained a resource advantage and are in a winning position, meaning that when you have a traditionally neutral position, where you are both in the same spot, this is a neutral position, even though it is bad for both of you, you can still find and use win conditions to gain the advantage. Space. If there's a corner here and you can maintain that corner before they do, you have cover, meaning that it's harder to hit you and it's easier to hit them. They don't have cover. No cover, cover. That's using space. Speed is, let's say there is a set range of gunfight potential here. Let's say in Apex Legends, to give an example, this distance overall from here is 1,000 meters. The damage fall off on the guns won't cover that range. So how can I increase my speed to close that range? But let's say this difference is Rainbow Six. And this gap is 1 foot. The ability to close the distance at knife might be what you want to take. If I have speed or enough, or if I think about getting to close the distance first and knifing you, because knifing has a higher hitbox and it's a one shot, I'm going to try to use speed to close the gap and kill you. These are win cons. We are not going to be worrying about these. We are assuming they're equal. Just to use the L as a thing there. We are assuming it's an equal condition and that we won't be aiming for these specifics because we're looking at the fundamentals. These measurements are the thing that will help us in the individual games. These are the micros. So, now that you understand how to win at the small conditions, ultimately, when you simplify down to a neutral point, you can use one of these three, and there are neutral points that exist in the advantage of all of those. Notice I talk about time to kill, I talked about space, and I talked about, what was the last word I used? Time to kill, space, speed. Speed is a measurement of space, by the way. Time to kill is a measurement of space. Space is the foundations for both speed and time to kill. Time to kill and speed are equal. They are the offensive and the defensive because speed is movement. Movement is a negative. Time to kill is a negative. These are our risks. Time to kill and speed are our risks. Space is not our reward necessarily, but the resource we are fighting over with these two. These are all interconnected. These are then also changed by each game, right? You play different games, you have different outcomes, but all of these are equal. These are all resources as well. We are risking resources. We are trading resources to gain what? One fights. One fights help what? Helps the objective. Remember, we are never forgetting about this objective. I know I hammer it in every single time, but it's because you need to be able to prove this is going to help the objective. Otherwise, what you're doing is wasting your time. If not, if it's wasting your time, you're sitting where? You don't know. You're in an unknown. If you can keep track of the objective and how it affects the objective positively, you're in the known. So, what if we what's the word for it? What if we stopped looking at these three variables and we change the format. That's the basics. It's a 0 corner or a less than 0 corner game. Or, sorry, less than 1. Less than 1 corner. That was what that was. Even though they're technically 2 corners. 2 corner game exists around a true box. X, O. Remember, we are O. That's us. That's them. Remember what we talked about last time. Us is us. Them is our opponents, our opposition. Either the NPC or the PC in front of us that we are trying to defeat. Most likely PC if we're talking competitive games. 2 corner game. This is a game of rock, paper, scissors. Or Rochambeau if you're from the UK. When playing a 2 corner game, you know that your opposition is sitting on the other side. They know you are sitting at the other side. You are technically both in a temporary known that is turning very quickly into an unknown. This is considered the most fair condition. You both have a fleeting part of information that you will use to pursue each other. You will then create different games. What's rock? Let's say rock is right, because it has an R. We move to the right. We can only go 1 corner at a time, so we cannot approach here yet or here. That doesn't exist. So rock is right. Paper is left, because we need something that is opposite of right, so we'll go left. Paper is left. And scissors is sit still. Rock, paper, scissors. There you go. We can only go 1 corner at a time. We assume all equal elements. They can only go 1 corner at a time. You can only go 1 corner at a time. When we hit the point where you are within a 2 corner count, gunfight begins. That will always happen. Within 1 corner, you can even potentially knife fight. We also assume something else. The time to kill is the same. So whoever gets first, who is ever more fundamentally prepared, gets there first, wins. Who is ever more efficient with their decision, wins. Or is at least getting the advantage spot. Because it's not always a set win. But we take neutral, they go to advantage, and whoever is on the other side goes from neutral to disadvantage. There's now a gap there. This is how you see if someone is winning and someone is losing. We are trying to get our neutral to an advantage. They are also trying to get a neutral to an advantage. This is where the game is different than rock, paper, scissors. And also, why use rock, paper, scissors? Because if they throw rock and go right, you throw rock and you go right, you're in the same fucking position. Ta-da! Except when you go here and here, there's no initial winning or losing. That's because we're playing around a shitty example. A perfect, square, 50-50 even matchup. How do we make a perfectly square, even matchup better or worse? How do we change the positions? We change it from a square, even though a square is normal. You'll see a lot of these. You won't be playing around both parts of the square equally often. So we take it and we turn it into a rectangle. To measure the rectangle, we'll consider it 2 squares. X, O, us, them. Remember, we can only go 1 corner at a time. We will consider 1/2 of the long way to be 1 corner, since it is 2 squares. These will be your actions. You can only take one action per turn. It can be to move or shoot. Shooting happens best when you sit still, so we will consider sitting still, preparing to shoot. Rock, paper, scissors again. Right, left, stay. What's the winning play? Well, we talk about doing nothing is always bad. So don't do nothing. So we're not sitting still. Because why not sit still? Because we can only we look down both lanes, we're pressured by both lanes, and we know it's one corner, we know where they are at. So them taking any action, them taking one action could kill us. Meaning that we have a threat on the far side. This is our danger area. This is our lose con. If you can't figure out how to win, look at how to not lose. This is our lose condition, this long range. How do we reduce this? Boom. Well, now we have this over here. Yes, but we do have transition time, meaning that we aren't looked at from either side of this and this. So moving isn't actually a full loss. What we gain is cover. So it's minus time to kill plus cover. This makes it a defensive option. What is it as well? It's a loss and gain. This is a neutral to neutral position. So it's not a bad play to make. If it's a directly neutral to losing position or disadvantaged position, that's a bad thing. We don't do that. Neutral to neutral, that's fine. Neutral to winning is ideal. So we should always look to neutral to win, neutral to advantage. Well, we know we can't create a single advantage off of one action in this moment, no matter which way we go or what we do, whether we sit still or we take one line to cover to a different corner or two lines to take the risk. It genuinely does not matter. Now, at this point, let's say we have made cover, or we've made the cross. We have three potential outcomes. This is where the two corner theory is going to create a better player fundamentally. The two corner theory is the process of uptime. What does uptime look like in a game where you have no ability information and you have an equal position with a disadvantaged side for both people to take? We're also assuming you can't climb on this stuff. It looks at how few question marks, how few unknowns we can have, because the more known we have, the more our chances of winning are. Because if we know where they are at, we are taking unknowns and turning them into knowns. Exactly what we talked about last time. So how do we have as few question marks? We peek. Peeking we'll consider a free action because we're gaining information with every step that we take. It's not something, it's non-cooldown. You can look around and see things. We look here, what do we know? If we don't see anyone here or here, that means they are anywhere from here out of this LOS to the other side, this question mark. So we know for a second that if we have done this as optimally as possible, and we've peeked and we see nothing here and nothing here, we know for a second they're within this range. They're within this corner, which means what? We have taken a neutral and we know it's a neutral. If they've done the same thing, equal position. Why? Because in the game of rock, paper, scissors, if you throw the same thing, it's a pause or it's a break. You peek here, you see them here. They have been looking at this corner for longer, meaning for 1 second, they have moved, they've taken their disadvantage, and they've gained two advantages. What are their two advantages? They've been looking at the corner of interest, the POI, the point of interest, or the COI, the corner of interest, where the fighting is going to take place, most likely, and gotten that they have gotten a better position on it. That's a check. They've improved their position slightly. They have lost cover. They've improved their odds of winning. They're plus advantage for a second because they have this. They lose cover, plus advantage. Why are they plus advantage? Because they gained info on us without searching for it. They took the aggressive path and they got info on us. They know we took a passive position. Now, if that means they're at advantage, but we're not quite at advantage, it's still considered more neutral. But if these are the new positions, we're now down to what? One corner. We've simplified. Congratulations, we have simplified the game. If we haven't died off the initial contact, that little window that gave them their advantage for a second, and we had a disadvantage for a second because they got the free info on us. And they were staring at the corner and knew that that was their only threat at the moment. Because another thing is we have to look at their perspective. If they're sitting here and they go up and they see us here, they know that we didn't go that way. They also know by taking a single corner here, if I took the same path, I can't threaten them. I can't pressure them. They've taken this short aggressive opportunity to get a small advantage. This is a very small win. This is a plus closer to neutral. In the same way we talked about minus minus earlier and single minus and double minus earlier. Plus, plus, plus. For a second, they were plus, we were even. If anything, actually, no. They were plus, that means it can't be us even. We were down for a second. But now that the position is settled and we haven't died, the initial encounter is gone. Their only advantage that they had was that small window. That window is gone. We now have control. This is our reward. How are we in control here? Any ideas? Anyone have any ideas, genuinely? No ideas. Got it. We are in control because they lack cover. That's what they sacrificed. They had their small window. They lost their small window. Now they lack cover. We are closer to the corner of interest right here. We have control of it. If we swing out here, which takes less time, less space to take this micro step, because this micro step isn't a full rotate, it isn't moving. It's the equivalent of standing still, which means the equivalent of shooting, right? It gives us the best opportunity or best window to shoot. And they have no cover to protect them. We have an advantage gunfight. This is a good window and a long window of opportunity. This is a winning position because the window of opportunity we have forces them in a position that no matter what of the three things they try to do, which is try to kill, try to stall, or try to disengage, which means they go back for disengaging, stalling as they move towards stalling, and kill as they move or fight us directly. We win on all three or have an advantage on all three. We know this because we've covered the unknowns, the unknown possibility that was over here and these unknowns here. We have three advantages. Everything they do is a disadvantage. They're in a double negative. We are in a double positive. I'm sure I don't need to explain why it's a double negative for them. Every option is poor. It does not matter what they do. It will take two corners or two actions to get them into a safe position, into a position that is neutral again. Because they ran forward one, we ran forward one, we took what was initially a 3-corner gap and reduced it to 1 corner where we're at the advantage. That is ultimately understanding space. So, how do we bring in different abilities and different guns from other games into this equation? We now need to add a second variable. We now know how to win on the long forms. This is static cover, by the way. Sorry, I need to cover this. Apologize. This is static cover. There are no moving components. It is decently equal for both sides to play. It is coverable by all players. Not always, but it's not going to be changing. This won't change. There's non-changeable elements. Dynamic cover have changeable elements or have lines of sight. Dynamic has, little pocket holes that you can shoot through from here to here. So there's LOS on both sides, meaning that we actually have a pause or a half step, which we'll get into much later. Also can have things like doors. Doors that swing open. Ladders or stairs to get up to the height. If we want to concern ourselves with height, and why have I not brought in verticality yet, especially for a conversation with corners? Verticality is just another corner. Remember, if someone is here and someone is here, this person has the advantage, right? We have the advantage here. If this person is rappelling up a building and this person's on top, they have advantage. It's high ground. If this person can push them back and then cover the distance, then it's a neutral position. That's how games become extremely dynamic, extremely quick, is because of abilities and guns. Now, how do we measure this in a sensible environment? Well, once again, we're going to take our default fighting platform of 2 squares, 2 corners that are face to face, and we are going to add distance. Let's say we're gonna distance variables. We have the ability to hit within the ranges of 1 corner to 0 corners. That's our range. That's what we can hit. Our opponent will have the ability to hit between 1 corner and 2 corners, but they have no ability to defend themselves within 0 corner ranges. So our goal is to then reduce. If our goal is to reduce, we are at a slight disadvantage. If our goal is to increase, we are either neutral or at advantage. If our goal is to stall, we want to be at advantage or neutral and remain at the same place, no matter what it is. So they can go 2 corners. We can go 1 corner. That's so bad. Hold on. Now, normally there will be an evening out, but we're going to consider this playing just from disadvantage here. We are at an obvious disadvantage. This is by design or by pick. This is where we have some sort of fundamental flaw or gap that we are either aware of, but are needing to play around, or we're getting pressured out of and had previous poor decisions that led to this moment. Doesn't matter. We can still get out of it. When we are playing a 1 corner game maximum, we need to try to be around as many corners in a single position that we can reach. And we want to avoid anything that we can't play around. And consider this losing territory. So if we play on either side, these are losing territories over past these lines here. All of this part here, losing territory, losing territory. If we can both move one corner at a time, everything else is equal. What is then our winning position? Closing the gap, reducing. So always then taking a more aggressive route. Our opponents will then have the three options again. What's most optimal for them? There are two lines of thought. One is if you're in a neutral position and your objective, if you have no reason to push because they have full coverage, that you don't need to sit. You don't need to move, so just sitting still is fine. There is no other way of moving this forward in an even matchup. If there's no objective other than killing, the person who is at disadvantage always has to make the first move, which means they will always have to play proactively, and whoever is at advantage needs to be playing reactively or proactive if they are confident enough to take the fight. So, neutral, aka sitting still, passing the turn in essence. Remember what I said last time, passing the turn. Sitting still is fine. Now, how long should you sit still for? If we're going to think about why it's good for them, let's break it down. Why is sitting here and doing nothing a good thing for them? They have full coverage of the range, and they know, because of the timing of the game, it takes two actions for you to get over here, meaning that they will be able to cover this corner for long enough. They sit here for a turn, maybe even a turn and a half, and then they wait and they pivot and they look over this way. Why? Because they know, based off of the timing, that you're most likely not coming from here, from this side. It's taken you too long. So they pivot away. Why is that important to know? Because that is how we can create mix-ups. We have inferred from nothing except the advantages that we know they have against us, our disadvantages. We have turned our disadvantage into a neutral. How? By messing with another resource, and that resource is timing. Every game has a rhythm. Every game has a flow or a time to kill. Meaning, not just a time to kill, but time to kill helps measure that. Meaning, you have the ability to predict optimal movement based off of starting positions. This is what chess is all about. Frankly, this is also why I kind of suck at chess. This is the part I'm still trying to master. You are aware of every decision that's made on the board. You can see everything, meaning that you can look at the negatives and always make positives, and you look at the positives and always infer how the negatives might affect you. By feeling the timing of the game, you can react more appropriately. This is not a core fundamental. This is very mistakenly as a core fundamental, and this is probably the most controversial take you might hear from me in this entire part, which is that timing isn't a beat or a rhythm. Timing is the risk implication of the resource and time bank you have. Throughout this entire demonstration, thus far with the two corners. We've assumed that you will always move the same distance at the same speed. If this is not directly set, like chess pieces are directly set, it's the mathematical approach entirely. If this is not directly set, we are then playing in a broken line or an adjusted line. A line is a series of choices made by both people that determine the positives, negatives, and neutrals of the circumstance that we measure. Breaking a line is doing a play that is suboptimal for the sake of mental taxation. During everything, you are playing against a human. For the sake of competition, we're assuming this is human, right? You will always be able to break your opponent's mentality. You have to live with that belief. Otherwise, you will always lose negative situations. At any point, there is an optimal resource loss decision to be made to put at risk to gain the reward and profit to take any negative losing, even double negative losing position and turning it positive. Not always double negative, but any negative, any single negative position. Sorry, any single negative, not double negative position, and win it. In essence, every time you drop the ball, there is still a time frame. You can grab it before it hits the ground. This is a fully negative position. This is one way of using offset fundamentals to win and understanding true fundamentals, or offsetting your knowledge of fundamentals against the rhythm of the game to create optimal breaking points that gain the advantage. So, mental taxation. We are turning their advantage of options. Remember, they can look at both corners and not be in losing positions. These are both positives. We are turning their usage of options into a disadvantage. How? We wait. Passing the turn once, offsetting the time, or trying to use a predicted peak will give you an advantage. These are ideas of how to shake people off. You know they're looking here. You walk up. It's been one turn. You wait another 1.5 seconds, or you're assuming this is all 1 second increments for actions. They will have to take a half second and look here in case you've tried to offset the peak or they try to give variance for this. And then peak there, you'll find them looking the wrong way. Not always, of course, but this is a way of trying to take a disadvantage, turning it into an advantage. Why do we not want to do that in a position like this? Because we cannot punish that mistake. This is the idea of trying to be tricky, but doing it and being poor. This is a bad line. Because within two corners or two decisions, we've created a negative outcome because we were not thinking about our disadvantage. We were looking at trying to shake their advantage, but we're not looking at our disadvantage. We took their unknown, turned it into a known, but we took our known and didn't consider it, which is always a losing stance. Doesn't matter what you do to win the position. If you always make a bad decision with it, you will always be in a bad spot. Understand, this is where knowledge and execution become crucial. Knowledge of the execution and actual execution is the proving grounds of game intelligence or game IQ, game understanding, and specific game fundamentals. The unknowns, is the rhythm I've been talking about. The knowns are our win conditions and lose conditions. We considered our win, we didn't consider our lose, so we lost by taking a poor series of decisions. With that being said, there is always a right decision. If my opponent understands this, that there is always a right decision, they will play to counter it. How do you counter this position? You want to keep as many corners apart as possible. They will want to mirror. Remember, if they keep the position neutral, they're still winning. When this happens, you're in a mental game. You will keep looping, and it is who breaks the loop first. This creates cycles. Why are we talking about this? Right? Like, I'm sure plenty of you are really asking that question. We've been talking about two corners. We now have a disadvantage. We're talking about turning it into an advantage, and you have just proven to us, right here, right now, Kevin, that if they're smart, we can never win. Why? Why is this important? This cycle is what's known as a commitment. In the micro game, the two corners looks at your next two corners decisions. What two corners can I advance to? Is this one better? Is this one better? Can I go back and forth? Does that bring me an option? Can I disengage and re-engage? Can I double disengage out? What are my options? If you want to break a cycle or you see you're going to cycle in position, how do you escape? If they have a two-corner position on you and they are going to go two corners up because that's the optimal play, you can either choose for aggression and try to win that. We've talked about that. You can try to loop them for a cycle. That's the neutral stance. Or you can do the winning play. This is always considering, once again, the objective. There's an objective behind this decision. We're going to assume the objective is surviving, that you need to live. What are your two decisions? If you know they're going to be going this way, you can escape. You can escape in two directions: down or out. Down means you're going to take a part of the cycle and then use the orbit that you've created around a box to break out at a different section. You're now considering this whole thing a roundabout for yourself. If this is your exit, start leaving. Just know that wherever you go, you want to have a minimum 2-corner gap of distance, no matter which part of the map you go to, or you can create a corner in between to create a new cycle. Why do you want to create a new cycle? These are neutral, not losing. And if you're disengaging, you're taking your disadvantage and turning it into neutrals. On to the next part of this game. 2 boxes. Remember, that's what we got this shape with. The figure eight. I'm going to simplify and go this way. Let's make this as good as we can get it. We're going to assume that all corners and gaps in between are one space, one action. You know, one dash is one action here. X, O, us, them. Same thing, 2 corners, 1 corner. X has 2 corners, we have 1. We are at a disadvantaged position here because they have a distinct resource advantage because they have passive resource gain that we cannot get, which is more space. They have more effective usage of the space that they can contain. Remember what we talked about earlier? Boom, boom, 1 corner. Is this 1 corner of space, though? It's diagonal. No. Anytime you go diagonal, it's considered a half step. If you go from here to here, it's 1 step, 1.5 if you go here. So it's 1.5 steps for any time you can cut through corners, sometimes even 2, depending on the value of the character or the value of the circumstance, the size of the corner, the gaps, etc. 1.5 corners, they have 1 to 2, you have 0 to 1. Now, our traditionally winning play is still a losing play. This is where disengaging becomes more effective. No matter what we do, we're still at disadvantage from any approach that happens. But are we? Remember, we talked about 1 to 2 corners, but what we've effectively done is created 3 spaces, 3 corners. So if they're here and we're here, they can't hit us. Which means this goes from a negative position or disadvantageous position to a neutral position. Why? Well, because they don't have the reach. We're here, they go from here, go here. They still can't hit us. If they approach, we can react. We're the one reacting, normally means we're at the advantage. This is where the objective, once again, will take precedent. Let's actually add an objective this time. We now have the figure eight. The figure eight, by the way, is the quintessential image of any map design you will find. It's simple, yet highly effective. Why? Remember, 149. 1 person, you. 2 people, knowns, unknowns. Boom, boom. 9 is now measuring all the advantages and disadvantages. Why talk about the 9 here? We have three lanes. If you can't look at this, we now have a grid. If you can't go through these areas, all of these are offline, or, unable to be looked through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ain't that something, huh? These are the 9 positions. These do not one-to-one correlate with advantage, disadvantage. 9 will not always be advantage or disadvantage, right? But this is the grid that we're going to look at. This is how we're going to see it. I'm going to make the grid a little nicer to look at. Actually, we're just still going to simplify it. No, we're doing the grid. Ugh, I hate grids like this. Boom, 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 boom. All of this is offline. We're going to look at it like a chessboard. This is us. This is them. LOS has to be maintained for one turn, not fern, one turn within range. Remember, we're looking at this with a disadvantage. This is the worst case scenario. X has a 1 to 2 range. We have a 0 to 1. X can move to either of these spots. We can move to either of these spots. We can also stay in the same spot. Moving towards our opponent is not our goal. Our goal, if we are to change the objective of, being able to kill our opponent still, and there's no way out of this. We're going to assume that there's no way out of this. It's necessary for us to stay within the grid. Thank you, Messiah. Appreciate that for the hydrate. If our goal is to stay within the bridge or within the grid because of the objective, leaving the grid is losing. We always consider that losing if it does not help the objective. Assuming we need to maintain or survive, what is the best position for us? We want to be defensive. We want to have the most cover. Where we're at is good, but we're exposed by 2 lanes and 2 lanes only. So we want to move and be exposed to only 1 lane. So we move over here. The optimal play for our opponent is to close the gap because they have more range, but they want to keep us at the same area. So they push forward. We then have the ability to go 1 more corner here. We could even peek potentially. If we can't see past 2 corners though, then, or we can't consider past 2 corners, then we're at risk. Exposing ourselves at least a bit to be seen here. 1, 2. They have a 2 range gap on us. And we're going to assume that you're filling the whole spot and it's touch to touch, so it's, if you want to technically count it 3 and us 2, whatever works for your head. But they can still get us from here if they've pushed up. So then this becomes a losing spot or disadvantageous peak. Going back is then a waste of a turn, disadvantageous. It's the equivalent of sitting still. So moving into cover isn't winning. Let's consider why. One move that they make loses us the position, meaning that we set ourselves up in a either neutral or disadvantageous position. They set themselves up into a neutral or advantageous position. That's a bad change. That's a bad trade. So we don't want to make bad trades. If they go here, it's a good thing. That's the neutral for us, because then it's just an even position across the board again. So, what's then the right play? If going here is bad because it sets us up for disaster in being outplayed, and sitting still is bad, what's our only option? We only have 3 options, left, right, and sitting still. So we have to go left. If you do something every time and you keep dying, you're going to lose. That's not a good trade. That's not improving it. That's not helping the objective. You don't want to do that. Every single element of that is wrong. It fails to achieve our goals. So, at times, it is necessary to be aggressive even when it doesn't seem logical. So we move forward, they move forward. Why is this naturally the better game state for both parties inclined? Because of one word: simplification. Simplifying. Now you have potential LOSs here. They have the advantage. How then do we close this gap? Do we stay here? Is this the right play? Staying here and taking the fight? No, because this is a 1.5, remember? We can't lose. We can't win here. We will always be in a losing position. So this staying here is wrong. Going back, it's the equivalent of staying there, and it went back that way. Both wrong. So what are our options? You have one space you can go to because we can't move diagonally. We can only move one, not 1.5. Remember, diagonals are 1.5s. So we go here. Why is this a good position for us? We have exposure from 2 lanes, have no immediate cover, and 2 steps back would put us in our starting position. 1 step back puts us into a bad spot. Why is this a better position? It's because of our disadvantage. At this point now, any fight that is taken, because we have simplified it to 1 cycle around a 2-corner game, that we have taken what was our disadvantage, our 1 to 2 corner versus the 0 to 1 corner range, and we have reduced the maximum size to 1 corner, which we both have access to. Plus, we have now put, since we have simplified it down, we are only 1 step away from a 0 corner game where they cannot combat against us. The stance is neutral, but it's a winning position. It's a more winning position than we've had before. It's a gain and trade of resources. They get a small window of time. They get a small moment to prove that they can kill you. You can also potentially mind game it, waiting here for half a second, passing a turn, passing half a turn. They go out, you get your window, they have to wide swing. This is where things like peak swinging in games come out, where you are ready to take this fight, even if it's a bad fight, because we are 100% uptime. Remember, we're trying to be 100% effective towards the objective. And shooting, just putting the pressure, throwing bullets at them, will make it harder and show that there is pressure on them. You're pressuring them. If they're not fully peaking, it's better for you to just run. Why? Because you want to reduce the gap as much as possible. Your goal, your objective is still to reduce that disadvantage. But by, putting pressure, you can then make this possible. It slightly slows you down, but you've already paid half a turn anyway, so your turn ends up still within the same spot. You're just over here. You're still within the same part of the grid, speaking over all of it, but you're more at risk to quicker peaks on the close, because whoever's closer to the corner of interest is winning. So they take their shot. That's their action. You've moved. They take an action here. You move here. You have now traded positions. You have the corner of interest. Back to a neutral game. We talked about the neutral game. We talked about the 2 corners. That's how you win. Simplification. What does simplification look like? Reducing the variable resources that have disadvantage to you and taking advantage is increasing the resources that you do not have. What don't you have? You don't have the range. So how do we make that not our problem? We get rid of the range of the game. How do we do that? We look at every decision our opponent can make, knowing any of the information, and we move forward from it. Now, what if, total different hypothetical, what if we don't know where they're starting? Could be here, could be here, could be here, could be here, here, here. This is where we're going to look at unknowns. When you have unknowns, what is our number one goal? To turn them into knowns, to reduce the amount of unknowns so that we can increase the odds of winning. We know the disadvantage that we have, the 1 corner to 2 corners. What's the right play? Well, moving here is not going to increase any field of view. We can say that it will get rid of that, but it'll add this, this, this. You have given them a fog of war cycle. These things here are what get noobs killed. Okay? If you don't know games, a good player that will use this to kill quickly against low level players in any game will recognize cycles and use these to turn the momentum and the rhythm of the game on its head so that by the time you're back in this position, it doesn't matter where they were, they won't be in the same spot. You'll still be at disadvantage. You'll still be in the unknown. And that's used by good fundamental movement because the more fundamental movement uptime you have by doing everything as optimally as possible, the more of this you generate for your opponents. This is why movement players in Apex, why Omni movement in Call of Duty, why Titanfall as a whole is enjoyed, why Quake was considered so good, because you had to keep track of the variables and possibilities that were so many that, we're outside of two corners range at this point. We don't know where they're at. They could be anywhere. By the time we re-engage from any point, we're losing. Right? That's what makes those games so good. This is, in essence, what the Reddit Lucio mindset was back in the early Overwatch days. And I don't know if it's still that way today. Using this is what you want to uh, using this information is what you want to gain, right? Is what gets you wins against people who are bad. This is what fundamentals builds and brings. Because if you're making poor fundamental choices, you'll be punished by fundamentals. Poor fundamental choices reducing your resources and trading for poor decisions, sitting still, taking losing positions here. We move out. What changes? We have unknowns on this. We would know because of if someone pushed here that they would have some sort of shot or line on us. That's the wrong buttons. So we can assume that this is considered safe-ish, safe on a timer, safe for 1. We have now reduced the vision here. We can see that no one is directly here. We can relatively assume if no one's directly here, that close on this part of the corner is probably not a threat to us. Let me get rid of the question marks. So if we've moved here, we consider safe here. We can also consider safe here because we just moved out of it. No one's going to be there, right? Assuming people can't spawn behind you and kill you. So we have a trail. This is what we will call our wake, right? It's the term for someone's actual trail, the falsified trail or the actual trail. I think wake comes from the smell, actually. Either way, I think it's like a smell or a scent that's left behind somebody. I think that's the technical definition of a wake. But the wake is where you last were. This is your ghost. This is what you were looking at. We can consider that you're always safe for 1 every single time, unless you were previously in combat and they chase. If you didn't have combat, you can consider safe for 1. We keep this line of sight open, so we know that nothing is there still. And we now have some line of sight to here and here. We can't be 100% certain, but we'll consider the same sort of thing for the minus and the double minus with question marks. Single question mark here, single question mark here, single question mark here, double here, double here, double here, double here, single here. Single question marks mean they could be there, it could be imminent, but we are 1 corner away from finding out. 2 question marks means that we are 2 corners away at least, if not more. And 1 corner again is peeking back. 1 corner again is one corner. So like here, we could peek back into a safe spot and see this. A short rotation or holding angles consists of moving between a single or 2 or more, a single but oftentimes 2 or more corners to cover this space as effectively as possible, meaning that we have either full control or one corner, one question mark on every spot that we don't see. So, lines are lines of sight. We're looking forward, we know these angles. What can we assume? At this point, nothing. We don't have information. We're checking as 1 to 2 corners at maximum. 2 corners at maximum, but we want to check 1 corner at a time based on volatility. If they haven't peaked from this angle, we can assume that they're not coming this way most of the time. So the odds of them coming this way are reduced. Why? Because we've had no sign of life. It's a short it's a 1 corner gap, right? It's that one action to cross. Same sort of thing that happens for us if we had gone this way. And they would use that information against us. We're using that information against them. If they were here, we probably would run into something. By the time we get here, right, if this is our position now, by the time we get here, safe, single question mark, this is technically a double. This is a single. We have line of sight here, line of sight here. Single, single, double, double. We've moved the question marks in essence from here to here, but this was previously safe. So now it's moving into, this was a loss, this was a gain, this is neutral, these are gains, right? So we're gaining full information. These are neutral, these are neutral. We're gaining this full information for the loss of one position. Not the most exciting thing to learn. By moving forward, things behind you aren't likely to kill you as often. But how do we use these advantages and disadvantages to our advantage? One, we've simplified the game down to that 1 to 2 corner problem. At any point, we are 1 corner from cover from any of our threats. If we're swung from here, we can move up. If we're swung from here, we can move there. If we're swung from here, we can move here. If we're swung from here, we can move there. It's a 1v1, so we have no problems. We can just move either one space and cover all our options. So we're in a safe, not a true safe, but a relatively safe position. By this point, we can make assumptions that this spot is safe, but we still don't know about this. If we don't know, if it's a double unknown, we never know. We cannot predict anything. This is also assuming at any point where you have combat, the combat begins. We'll move into more diverse stuff on that probably in part 3, if not part 4, maybe even a series later. When we have 2 question marks, we can't guarantee anything. But we've simplified our disadvantage just like we did last time. Now our goal is to reduce the unknown. What's the objective? Reducing unknowns so that we have the most information that we can get. Now we run in between here and here, and we're cautious about it. Why? Because we want the ability to check these lanes as often as possible. We leave these up for question marks, even though we can consider that this one immediately safe. The reality is, if there's a question mark there, there's a chance you'll die. If they sat and waited for 3 seconds and then swing and kill you, and you still can't react, they created a window by disrupting the game, and you lose. So be it. So what do we not know? If we go here, we can get rid of both of these at once, and then we can assume at that point, by the time we really cut through and go through the figure 8, we do our part of the figure 8. The 2 major unknowns we've had, which are here and here, can be reduced at the same time. Now, what's good fundamentals on safely reducing this? We started on this side. Wrong thing. Oh my god. Start on this side. So if we went this, and they started here and went this, our biggest risk is them peaking from here. This is the least likely, but this is our biggest risk because it's the least likely. Not biggest risk, sorry. It's our what we're going to trust and put as our blind spot, because we always are going to have a blind spot. We can't see 360 degrees around us. So how do we make this our blind spot? We walk up, but we're facing this way. Remember, we're using kind of gradients here. When you go around this corner, if this is your angle, all of this is seen. Sorry, all of this part is unseen. So if we go here against the far wall of the corner of interest that we're concerned about, being that they started either here or here and moved this way, because they haven't peaked from this side, and we know they didn't start over here, or we're more safe to assume that they didn't start over here because they didn't follow us. Then, by walking up the angle of our safe corner, of our original corner, and peaking from far, we create a slow gain of information. But why would this be a problem for us in the circumstance? Remember, this is a disadvantageous circumstance. We're 0 to 1, they're 1 to 2. This gap is only good in an even game at range, where that range is non-problematic for both. Because we are at the disadvantage, want to take higher risks to get more reward, to even out the score, to turn it into an advantage. So we'll take the aggressive angle. Now, we've created the cycle, and we're going into here. If by the time we clear all of the 9 spots, or the 8 spots, sorry, around this, we consider that they're in the 9th spot, which is not here, somewhere else. So we start our cycle this way. We will gain information by moving this way. After we've moved this way and we do not see them, we continue the figure 8. We do the figure 8 around 2 corner defenses as one person going over 2 corner defenses, or 4 spots, covering basically a 3x3, using the 2 corners and Jesus Christ, the 2 spots that are both 2 corners, creating 4 major areas. Not 4 major areas, Jesus Christ. 4 possible cycles, because you can cycle this way around one, this way around the same one, this way around one, this way around the other, like the other point. You have 4 possible cycles as one person to cover all 3 lanes and their respective spots, their respective corners. In essence, here, 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 and then the in-betweens. The transfers, the single safe corner rotates between. The 9 major spots within the 3 lanes. 3 columns and 3 lanes. That's the 149. That's using the 2 corners and the 149 rule together. By utilizing this, you create better fundamentals. It seems kind of crazy to pair the 2 together, but we're still not done, okay? We are still not done. We are done, sadly, for today, though. So if you did enjoy, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Come over to Twitch as well. You can subscribe there or just follow. Following's free. I appreciate it. We need to get those numbers up. If you're on Twitch, go over to YouTube, subscribe. Leave comments. Like, all that good shit. But that's it for today. Thank you for coming by. Do appreciate it. I am going to stream a little more after this, but I'm going to end the stream now. Take a break, then restart it. Thank you so much for coming by. This is part 2. 2 more parts to go over. I'm not going to say what exactly it is that we're going to go into detail about. I said it on the first one. And I think I've already gone off track with that. But learning more about the 149 rule and its usage in the two corner game. Remember as well, the two corner game, all of that is applicable to verticality. As long as there's gaps in between, you can create the figure eights vertically, and that there's no negatives for climbing, speed differences, stuff like that. But it's using variables and measurements anyway. Try to make yourself a better player, better person every single day. Much love. Tell somebody you love them. It's good to see you all. Thank you for stopping by. I will be back probably playing League of Legends later because I'm trying to hit high rank in that because I'm bored. Anyway, love you. See you.